Welcome to Health UnaBASHed, the show that is unapologetically passionate about health and wellness innovation that promotes a sustainable and equitable healthcare delivery and financing system. Hosted by digital health advocate, author, and thought leader, Bashe, the show looks at the thought-provoking ideas, people, and companies that are making a difference. I'm Gregg, the producer and co-host of the show, and join Gil as we engage top industry talent who share their insights and best practices to create sustainable change. On today's show, our guest is Aneesh Paul Chopra, an American executive who served as the first Chief Technology Officer of the United States. He was appointed in 2009 by President Barack Obama and was at the White House through 2012. A veritable force of nature, Aneesh enthusiastically stewarded the healthcare industry's adoption of electronic health records, opening the door for the birth of digital health technologies, while also moving the needle towards value-based healthcare as incentivized by the Affordable Care Act. Aneesh is the author of Innovative State, How New Technologies Can Transform Government, and co-founder and president of CareJourney. And with that introduction, Gil, over to you.
Gregg, thank you so very much. You and I have been looking forward to welcoming this very special guest for quite some time. And I mentioned to Aneesh that just before the call, I mentioned I'm speaking to the one and only America's first Chief Technology Officer, Aneesh Chopra, and they were like blown away. They said he is the most amazing person, and they're right. I had the pleasure of actually being with Aneesh as a moderator on a very special program a few weeks ago, looking with national experts like Aneesh at our health infrastructure in terms of creating a value-based care system. Is it even possible? How do we make that happen? And Aneesh's voice was the voice of clarity, the voice of purpose, and the voice of direction. Now we have him with us on Healthcare Radio Now. And Aneesh Chopra, it's a welcome to the program. You've done so many things. You really understand the system of politics. You understand the system of public health. You're really a technology pioneer in the sector. You have a great book, which I've got to connect with you because you've got to sign my copy at some point. I'm a fan as well, of course. You're here on the program. And I wanted to speak to you a little bit about, if I could go back in time, because then I want to go fast forward. I want to talk about what you're up to now, the problems you see on the horizon. I want you to pull off the Band-Aid, no matter how painful it is, and talk to us about what ails America's healthcare system and your prescription for healing. But just to go back for our listeners today, you've been active in the political system. You're really a technology pioneer. You were asked by President Obama during the administration to come into the White House as our nation's first Chief Technology Officer. And my question's a little interesting because it's not why they asked you. That's evident. Anybody who sees your biography will say, I get that. What took them so long to get a Chief Technology Officer? Technology is the foundation of our financial system, our health system, our consumer marketing system, Amazon, everything. Technology is the wiring to any advance we're making in the world or any landmine when we deal with cybersecurity in the world. And finally, they call up and say, would you come in and be our Chief Technology Officer? Aside from being, let me give that some serious thought. Did you ever consider what took them so long to figure out technology is essential to the well-being of the nation and the world?
Well, Gil, let me begin by just thanking you for your very kind introduction and excited to be with you today. And let me defend and explain a little bit about why governance is the way it is and how it's shifting. So generally speaking, governments operate in a bit of a vertical silo. So we have a healthcare department, we'd have an education department, Congress will fund, and there'll be appropriations associated. And so we had been building up these various departments. And as you might imagine, there has always been a quote unquote technology department. There are just expert agencies that were more narrowly scoped. The Federal Communications Commission focusing on the infrastructure, and the Federal Trade Commission, which looked at market dynamics, specifically now in the context of privacy and digital privacy. So we've had this construct where different verticals would have their own kind of oversight function. And when you get to the White House, you do have cross-cutting advisors, and their job is to make sure that the levers of government are moving in the right direction. So there had been, and there will always be, an Office of Science and Technology Policy. There had been a Director of Technology, but structurally, when you have an elected official to whom that elected official assigns direct reports matters. It puts priority. So this muscle, called the Director of Technology in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, had been a Senate-confirmed position, but largely in an outpost in a different building, and probably rarely in the past had a direct line to the President of the United States. What President Obama simply acknowledged was that he wanted to prioritize the advice he would be getting around this issue, not on the narrow vertical, should we spend more money in technology R&D, which had been the purview of this prior office, or engaging with the expert agencies on privacy and telecommunications infrastructure, which again had been the purview of this office, but to ask the question you posed, which is how might technology, data, and innovation influence the success of broader policy objectives, whether it be economic recovery, which was a priority in the middle of the economic crisis, or more discrete areas like improving healthcare delivery reform and managing this kind of educational reform effort to get people to the highest and best use of their talent. So that was a new concept. And what I'll share with you, in my view, is that we have a very clear bipartisan path to make effectively permanent the notion that we need a senior level advisor that can offer that kind of cross-cutting advice in the room to make sure when the Secretary of Health presents an idea that has embedded in it technology and data and innovation perspectives, that there's an advisor that can engage to make sure that's optimized given the best state of affairs. So that to me, I wasn't shocked that it hadn't been in place. I was the fourth Secretary of Technology in the Commonwealth of Virginia. It was a Republican governor that created it. So this wasn't a partisan political decision. It was really the timing is right to bring this sort of expertise into the executive branch.
Well, we're grateful that you answered the call and decided to do that, and that you're continuing on the path to be an advocate for the role technology can play in improving the human condition. I wanted to swing forward and talk a little bit about culture, the culture of healthcare. And so much depends on improving care through technology, whether we look at technology from innovations that we're making in terms of medical devices that are connected, the connected medical devices that are implantables and wearables, and so forth. And I wanted to get your perspective, if I could, for a few moments on cybersecurity and technology in healthcare. This is a real risk. It's not just about data that is sort of pulled and ransomed from hospital systems. It's the fact that we have people who have implantables that could be altered by people who have really ill designs on people's well-being. And did that keep you up at night at all during your role in the White House?
So it is safe to say that cybersecurity remains an up at night issue for anyone in the White House. And if you're the technology advisor to the president, it would be a particularly stressful matter for you. Even if you don't have day-to-day operational responsibility for the systems, it is unequivocally true that we've digitized faster than we've protected the underlying assets. So this is an area about putting the genie in the bottle and thinking through what are better ways to move forward with technology, data, and innovation, but with minimal effect on consumer well-being. I will say that the initial scenario you gave about a programmable transplant that could be hacked For sure, there were science lab experiments around the possibility of said thing. Most production systems hadn't yet connected those devices to internet-based communication systems. So they were a little bit more of a closed loop process. But the point is very clear. The FDA had to build up capacity to understand the security implications of the devices they were bringing to market. We saw this in the smart grid. The electrical grid is a humongous area of concern. So in critical infrastructure, what we needed to do is get our arms around what the set of things are that we would consider to be best practice and hold our stakeholders in the private sector accountable to meeting those conditions. In some cases, meeting this bar may exceed the effective budgets available. If you're a primary care doctor with a 3-doctor practice in suburban Atlanta, you may not have a huge IT budget. And to think that you are going to be responsible for this is going to be a little bit challenging. So we need to come up with economically viable ways to ensure in our weakest link, we have access to systems and protections that would allow us to function in a digital age without adding harm. Have we solved the problem? No, but I will tell you a few things that give me confidence. Thing number one, we now have more transparency and accountability, which is putting pressure. In the past, it was sort of like, oh, a little bit of a whack-a-mole. Something happened, let's go chase it. Now I think there's a little bit more transparency. So we know the nature of the problem. Number two, we're increasingly working in public-private partnerships to mitigate the risks. And so we already see the federal government doing more to identify attack vectors and widely disseminating those results so people can be equipped more timely to respond. And then I think the third thing is we're also redirecting the strategy mostly around what is it you can do to pivot away from a traditional model of security, which is to protect the bad guys from ever getting in, prevent the bad guys, towards one that says we have to assume bad guys are in. We have to neutralize their effect. And so it shifts the technological roadmap around neutralizing threats within, which is a different animal than what we've done in the past around expanding the moat to protect protect against attackers coming in.
So you talked about your role as being the fourth sort of like chief technology officer of the Commonwealth of Virginia. You've served in other public service roles. You contemplated serving in government on the state level as well. You know the White House, of course. You have this really illustrious background. I mean, Johns Hopkins, Harvard. Your educational background, your knowledge of technology, you're being a pioneer in an area. If I could ask a personal question for a second, you're the type of person, certainly after your first stint in state government, that could have said, I'm gonna join Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft as a chief technology officer or chief strategy officer, and I look forward to the stock options. I'll do that for 5 years, and then I'll buy my yacht and travel the world. And you chose, obviously, purposefully, mindfully, a much more arduous route of public service. I wanted to, if you don't mind, getting a little bit beneath that, because I so admire this sense of someone who has so much ability, not just intellectual ability, not just skill in an area, but also the personality to deal with political institutions so successfully. And then you go the route that you've gone, which is really almost like an NGO passion route to improve the human condition. Why did you choose that? Have you ever doubted that path?
And if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Health Unabashed on Healthcare Now Radio. Our guest is Aneesh Chopra, the first Chief Technology Officer of the United States, author of Innovative State, How Technologies Can Transform Government, and co-founder and president of CareJourney.
No, I don't doubt it. I love the path I've chosen. Gil, it's a little, I wouldn't want to declare that I'm sort of a,
I know you're on boards and so forth. You're an advisor to companies.
Yeah. So let me. I was blessed with an early career at an incredibly talented firm called the Advisory Board Company, which allowed young people to move up the ranks. And I had the pleasure of serving near the end of my tenure in the managing director role and overseeing some of our areas of research. And that company had gone public. And as you could imagine, Gil, it was a successful public offering. And so some of us involved in that who served in, whatever role we were serving in benefited, I would argue, a bit prematurely from the goodwill of the economy. And so I found myself in a healthy position to commit to public service and to really make sure that the family is provided for and the resources are available. So I didn't view what I was doing in the context of sacrifice against another career path, but rather a chance to pursue my mission objective. Now, as luck would have it, the argument I've made about the role of technology, data, and innovation in especially big challenging problems that we sort of grapple with in the economy and health and energy and education is that given the nature of the US economy, these are inherently public-private initiatives. And so I believe a particular focus on public sector technology, data, innovation combined with harnessing the capability of the private sector will ultimately be part of the formula that will move us towards a better place. And better place to me is American economic competitiveness while delivering highest quality care for every American. And so we'll sort of have to square those, what often feel like competing priorities when you have limited public dollars to make investments for our future.
I'm not going to let you off the hook on your being one of the good people, because, again, even though you graciously acknowledge you benefited early, many people would use that as a pivot to say, now on to Goldman Sachs. So you made a choice at the intersection and you said, I now have a good foundation. I feel secure. And my passion is public service. And, I just want to extend on the behalf of one of the nation's citizens who benefits from your passion. Thank you. And let it go at that. Let it go at that.
You're very kind.
So you spent this time in government. You wrote a great book that I highly recommend. It's readily available on Amazon. And the role that governments can play in the transformation of our economy and certainly in this conversation of our health system.
Yes.
I really believe that our health system is horrifically fragmented. The different players, the patient communities, the payers, the product innovators, the policymakers, the providers, they don't even understand each other's business models. They don't understand how each other makes money or charges what they charge. It's kind of all a mystery to everybody. And along with that, I'm sometimes amazed, I've experienced even in the same hospital system, they're unable to access the same patient's data from the OBGYN department to the oncology department, even though they're sort of like 100 feet away. Sometimes they're unable to speak to each other. I had an instance where an OBGYN said to me, I haven't delivered the notes to the oncologist because I'm waiting for my secretary to type them up so that we can fax them in the same system. So I'm not going to guess whether there's a fax lobby banging on the door of Senate Health or Energy and Commerce Health Subcommittee saying, please.
The VA did spend $140 million on an e-fax contract last year. So it is a hot issue continuing to grow.
Yeah, so obviously the fax machines are not doomed just yet. But you recognize that government can play a very transformational, positive role in government. I know in reading the book again, I'm sometimes amazed. We're in an era right now in a new administration where people have great suspicion of government, and they see any government intervention as big government. So we're at this very peculiar stage of distrust, suspicion, anxiety. Looking at the time you wrote the book, looking at now, what's your prescription for helping people to understand that government can play a very positive role here?
Yeah, so let's start with what gives me some optimism. Fragmentation can be a curse or it can be a blessing. In the blessing department, it allows one to see pockets of innovation that demonstrate, in fact, certain populations, we can slow disease progression, maybe even prevent disease, and we can mitigate and manage chronic conditions to achieve better outcomes. So within our fragmented system, there are pockets of leading practice. We don't have to invent a new form of physics. They exist. The challenge is understanding how to bottle up those operational processes, governance, leadership, technology, and scale what works. It has been a dream of policymakers to rectify the healthcare system's ills by changing the economic incentives of the system. And I'm in the camp that believes that you get what you pay for. And if the incentives align towards total cost of care responsibility, then a lot of creativity and innovation and technology will be applied to achieving that mission objective. I remember vividly, Gil, a person I respect deeply, John Glasser, CIO of Partners Healthcare at the time, Mass General and Brigham, was advising the administration during the early days of meaningful use. I think we asked him to come down a day or two a week. And we were having this discussion about, are we literally subsidizing the software that's deployed today, which reflects the collective input of requirements from a variety of doctors and hospitals out in the community that have been building towards a traditional fee-for-service system. In other words, we've hard-coded software to optimize the economic model that may not be the one we wish to have. So the question was, how do we bring the workflows and the technology systems to work in a manner that is a little bit ahead of their own customers' demand signal? We were in this odd dynamic. Hard to play, kind of market maker that way. So this is, with a great deal of humility was the challenge. John came down and said, look, we've been digitized for, 30 years. I can't generate a list of patients who smoke. And if you wanted to go after smoking cessation programs as a public health matter to lower, the onset of lung cancer and all the other ills that come from it, that's not what we're engineered to do, because in the fee-for-service system, that was not a thing. Maybe it wasn't a documented item in the billing ledger that would result in a payment change. So as a result, we decided to basically peel the Band-Aid off the wound in a series of steps. We said, look, we know we're going to be having to fix the tech stack in advance of the demand signal out in the field, but let's see if we can do it without breaking the backs of the industry. And $35 billion was a reasonable investment that gave us a little bit of a runway to start asking for things that may not have been asked for by the customer base. And right or wrong, Gil, that was our strategy. Let's send the signal that we're going to move the economic model. The Affordable Care Act said we're going to move towards value-based payment. Let's tweak the technical requirements in like 3 knobs. We're going to turn the knob 3 times over the course of a decade. And let's open up as much public sector information as possible to measure where are we getting best performance and where are we struggling. That's the formula that we're in now.
So hold that for a second. In our remaining time, I want to fast forward. You're doing some amazing things. You're a very collaborative, thoughtful person. What are you doing right now? What bothers you that you feel that with your bandwidth, with your ability, you want to change?
Well, I want to move all 3 hypotheses to the production system as fast as possible. And I'm playing a minor role wearing my CareJourney hat, happy to describe it, but let me make sure you understand the larger playing field. So we've had a decade of a moved value-based payment. And for anyone who gambles, it was the world's most exciting one-sided bet you could make. If you're a physician, we could allow you to continue in the fee-for-service system, sign up for the program, and only if you achieve savings will you get a check. If you didn't achieve savings, then try again next year. And so for the first 5-7 years of the program, it was truly a one-sided bet. Water is warm. And I think 1/3 of the Medicare beneficiaries were enrolled in these models in that first chapter of value-based care. we learned that some groups, mainly the physician-led networks, had slightly more performance than those that may be part of an integrated delivery network. That was counterintuitive, Gil, because people felt you had to be in an integrated delivery network to have the technology resources and the staffing model and the balance sheet to handle this move. But it turned out the scrappy independent primary care doctors were a little bit better at it. So we're now in the new phase where we're putting a lot more downside risk, and we are accelerating. So what does CareJourney do? Where do I think we need to go? We need to educate as widely as possible the opportunity for the medical community to move towards full cost of care relationships. And we have members and media outlets and others that we're using to kind of get the word out that not only is it possible, but you can thrive in this environment. So step one is shine light on what's possible. The second principle is that we absolutely have to retool the practice of medicine. And that means understanding how to assemble a patient's record longitudinally and mine it to give physicians the guidance they need that of the people that have not come in to see you today, here are the 5 we think you reach out to. And that's a very natural handshake between the technology sector and the physician to help make sure that there's enough balance in the day to get the individuals who are potentially declining outside of the practice to bring them in. And last but certainly not least, in my view, I believe we absolutely have to, it's kind of like the wall that's a paper thin wall, as my friend Todd Park used to say. We need to think about the culture change, and I have to help evangelize that in fact, we can accomplish the mission objectives, not on the numbers and the bean counter way and not on the tech spec to make sure the machineries work, but we have to have a conversation about, is this proverbial wall of disbelief as paper thin as it truly is? Can we punch that hole, as Todd used to alert, and encourage folks to demonstrate, yes, I can take that first step. And if we get more stakeholders in the healthcare sector believing and they take that first step, the other 2 pieces come in.
Aneesh Chopra, I want to thank you for joining us today. I wish this show were an hour. Let's petition the producers to make it an hour. You're magnificent. It has been a pleasure to have America's first Chief Technology Officer, consultant, author, advocate for a healthier U.S. healthcare system, valued-based, centered around the patients. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Gil.
Gregg, thank you. Take care, everyone.
And that's a wrap for today's broadcast. We want to thank our listeners for tuning in and our very special guest, Aneesh Chopra, the first Chief Technology Officer of the United States, author of Innovative State, How New Technologies Can Transform Government, and co-founder and president of CareJourney. Do follow his work on Twitter via @Aneesh Chopra and @CareJourney, respectively, and on the web via www.carejourney.com. You can learn more about Health Unabashed on the program page at healthcarenowradio.com. We air weekdays at 10:30 a.m., 6:30 p.m., and 2:30 a.m. Eastern, or for you left coasters like me, 7:30 a.m., 3:30 p.m., and 11:30 p.m. Pacific. And do keep the conversation going with Gil and me on Twitter by connecting with us @Gil_Bash, and that's BASHE, and @GreggMastersMPH, and that's Gregg with 2 G's. And do remember to tag your tweets with #HealthUnabashed. Until next time, stay unapologetically passionate about improving health.